A dictator gets kidnapped and his replacement goes to America, gets his beard shaved, and falls in love with a human rights activist who changes his entire life. He was born in 1973, and he was the one and only son of Omar al-Din. They say his mother died in childbirth, although we know the woman was suffocated with a pillow immediately after giving birth to al-Din. Omar al-Din is the ruthless leader of the nation he founded in 1976, known as Wadiya. The North African nation borders Sudan, Ethiopia, Djibouti, the Arabian Sea, and the Red Sea, which tells us it's been based on real-life Eritrea. Wadiya is rich in oil reserves, which explains the dictator's unbelievable wealth. When he was just 7 years old, al-Din gained supreme power over Wadiya. He was the second ruler of Wadiya's royal supreme rulers, and their nation is believed to be unconquerable. The unlimited oil wealth allowed al-Din to host his very own Wadiyan Games, a counterpart to the Greek Olympic Games. As if by some miracle, he won 14 gold medals and broke several world records. Being the supreme leader of a nation comes with its perks. The dictator decided to change 300 Wadiyan words to al-Din. This included commonplace words like positive and negative. To say the people were confused would be an understatement. This sexist, misogynistic, anti-Semitic dictator who behaves like a 10-year-old child and hates the West, especially the US, surrounds himself with an army of female bodyguards with prominent female features. Wink wink. Living the easy life and disposing of any government officials that he doesn't like, al-Din was in a league of his own. He was also supporting terrorist organizations and sheltered the leader of al-Qaeda, Osama bin Laden. According to al-Din, bin Laden has been living with al-Din since they shot his body double a year ago. Wadiya was on the brink of developing nuclear weapons, which were going to be used for, quote, peaceful purposes only. In reality, he was going to use these missiles whose tip wasn't pointy enough to, quote-unquote, destroy Israel. Right before his father passed away, al-Din promised he would democratize Wadiya and sell the nation's oil wells. When al-Din went back on his promise, the UN Security Council decided to make a military intervention. To resolve the problem, al-Din goes to New York City, where protesters are booing him on the streets. He enters the UN headquarters hoping to resolve the issue, but he is later kidnapped by Clayton. He posed as the person in charge of security preparations, but in reality, he was just a hitman. Tamir, al-Din's uncle, hired Clayton to get rid of the dictator so he could turn Wadiya into a democratic state, sell the oil fields, and pocket the profit. While Clayton decides how to torture al-Din, Tamir finds a body double for al-Din whom he can easily manipulate into doing his bidding. In the meantime, Clayton is getting annoyed with al-Din because all of his torture tools are outdated. Before setting himself on fire, Clayton shaves off al-Din's beard. The dictator escapes, but no one recognizes him without his beard. When Tamir comes to see if Clayton got the job done, he finds a charred body. Tamir mistakes Clayton's body for al-Din's and proceeds with the democratization of Wadiya. In the meantime, al-Din is trying to find a way back to Wadiya. Out of nowhere, he meets Zoe, a human rights activist. Instead of revealing his true identity, al-Din says that his name is Allison Burgers, and Zoe immediately offers him a job at her store. Unlike the stores in Wadiya, this one's called Free Earth Collective. The team working there is a vegan, feminist, non-profit cooperative operating within an anti-fascist, anti-oppressive framework for people of all or no genders. Basically, everything al-Din stands against. al-Din declines the job, calling Zoe Harry Potter because she is all-natural. While trying to find a way back to his home country, he encounters Nuclear Nadal. He was the head of Wadiya's nuclear weapon program. You know, before the dictator decided to execute him for not adhering to the dictator's design specifications. Nadal then takes al-Din to Little Wadiya, a small district in the heart of New York City. Here, they meet at the Death to al-Din restaurant. This restaurant is where all of the high-ranking government officials from Wadiya come after escaping execution. They have recognized al-Din and take up arms against him, but Nadal saves his life by convincing the people he is not al-Din. While they eat, Nadal tells him that the executioner of Wadiya is a member of the resistance movement, so all the people he ordered to be killed are actually alive and sent here. Then he decides to help al-Din return to power in Wadiya, if he makes him the head of the nuclear program once again. al-Din agrees, and the two devise a plan. Since Zoe is catering at the hotel where the treaty between the fake dictator of Wadiya and the UN representatives is going to be held, Aladdin agrees to take the job offer. Instead of working, Aladdin starts hitting on Zoe and makes sexual advances towards her. She is put off by this and teaches him about the wonders of masturbation. Being a dictator, Aladdin has never touched his own willy, but after the first time, he falls in love with it. Another person he falls in love with is Zoe. Until that point, Aladdin saw Zoe as this timid girl that's basically a pushover. But one day, he sees her yelling and screaming, and suddenly, she becomes much more attractive. Before Aladdin goes to the hotel to invade the signing of the treaty, he turns Allison's struggling business around. He enforces a strict schedule, he intimidates an inspector into giving Zoe's store a stellar review, and he even starts a personality cult around Zoe by hanging a lot of pictures of her on the walls. He does all of this with an iron fist, and with a lot of threats. After all of this, Aladdin doesn't want to lie to Zoe anymore, and reveals his true self. She is appalled that she could fall in love with a man that treats his people dreadfully. They break up, and Aladdin is forced to focus on the plan with Nadal. But there's one problem. He needs a beard. Thinking quickly, he decides to shave the beard off of a corpse, glues it on his face, and dresses in his usual attire. Then, using a zipline that Nadal made for him, Aladdin breaks into the hotel and convinces his body double that he is no longer ill. Since his body double isn't the sharpest tool in the box, he believes Aladdin and leaves. Now, the real dictator goes to the ceremony without telling Tamir, his uncle. Just as they are about to sign the document, Aladdin jumps up, tears the treaty in front of everyone, and tells the UN members that he will never sell Wadiya's oil fields to some rich oil companies from the West. For the next 5 minutes, Aladdin holds a speech about the beauties of dictatorship, but he does so by drawing parallels to the issues facing the United States. Everyone is confused, and just as he is about to finish his speech, Zoe appears in the background. Unable to bear the thought of her crying, Aladdin says that democracy is actually a good thing. He professes his love for Zoe and proclaims Wadiya a democratic state. Unable to bear the thought of Aladdin assuming power once again, Tamir pulls a gun and fires it at his nephew. Before the bullet hits Aladdin, his body double jumps in front of him and gets shot. He is not dead, since his job was to be shot in the head, not the stomach. 1 year later, Aladdin grew his beard, and Wadiya held its first presidential elections. They're supposed to be democratic, but Aladdin uses a little nudge to sway the polls in his favor. In the meantime, he and Zoe are getting married. Just before they could tie the knot, Zoe steps on some glass with her foot, revealing to Aladdin that she is Jewish. He instructs his lackeys to execute her, but somehow they are still together. His convoy is now made up of eco-friendly vehicles, and Nadal is the head of the nuclear program. The movie ends when Zoe reveals on national Wadiyan TV that she is pregnant, and Aladdin asks her, "Are you having a boy or an abortion?" Subscribe for more videos like this, and turn on the notifications so you never miss any of them.